Welcome to Field Day Crop Tour GSPS. This is day number 2. We're out in the Swan River Valley, just east of Swan, 2 miles and 2 miles north. Just want to showcase a little bit of what we're seeing. Today's August 20th. A couple of varieties I just like to highlight here. A lot of talk, a lot of excitement on. And that's, you can see the 2 different varieties from that flag. Now the variety on the right has been in the valley for 3 years, going on 4. I've had extremely good luck with this variety. There's so much risk in farming and gambling every year, but this is a variety at least you can mitigate some of that risk. It's been out for 3 years. I have 3 years of data on it, and it's done so well. It's stood well. Its disease control's great. It's got a Sclerotinia trait resistant gene in it. So for 2024 in the Swan River Valley, we're seeing high pressure on Sclerotinia. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing with this. I'm hoping that translates into yield. Not gonna get too crazy on yield guessing. The variety next to it is what I'm really excited about. It has a brand new trait in it that I now will pass the buck on to my territory manager, Gerald Lepp. And he would love to share some of that information with you.
Thanks, TJ. You're welcome. Thanks for having me here. We had about 25 customers and prospects out for a barbecue and a look at the trial here at TJ's brother-in-law's today. I'm going to talk about Pioneer P520L. This is our next step in pod shatter reduction for Pioneer brand seeds. So 505 has been a staple in the area for the last number of years. And what you're going to see out of 520 over 505 is better retention of those pods.
History here, there's 2 varieties in this plot that are really standing out for me. Gerald talked about the 520, how it compares a little bit to 505, it being, you know, an older variety around the Swan River Valley. And I was going to take a moment. There's a lot of people that have grown 612 Liberty. I've had a great success with in the past. Personally, I'm still more of a fan of the 505 variety. It's a great flavor of canola, but something to watch, the comparison of the next canola that Gerald's going to show you. It's a full season as well, and it's got some really nice traits in there that I think you're going to appreciate moving forward into 2025.
So this is P617SL. Wanted to share a little bit about it. It has the CR9 club root resistance, so that helps for those that are concerned about club root in their crops. And it has the Sclerotinia protection that is a fungicide equivalent, where it is an improvement over a spray pass on your sprayer is that you get protection from the beginning seed germination to the end. So the P stands for Pioneer brand seed. The 6 is the maturity, so that is a full length maturity when it's a 6. 17 is a random number for the next sequence of seed. The S stands for Sclerotinia protection, and the L stands for a Liberty tolerant variety.
Yeah. So it's going to be pretty exciting to see. Thanks for coming out here today, Gerald. Sharing your knowledge with everyone. We had a great day, a couple little rainstorms, but what a beautiful day it was. And we'll continue to document this plot as the year goes on. I want to give you a little bit of history first on this field. Was plant date, was somewhere at the end of May. Expectations going in, it'll be positive, good. Started out nice and strong and then progressively got worse, quite a bit worse. And by that I mean cold, miserable, and wet. June turned cold, single digits at night, barely double digits during the day, and of course, what a treat. More rain and more rain and more rain, which is great. And then it got hot in July. This dirt's not amazing ground, it's good, but it is a little sandy. And like any kind of sand, you know, if it's wet, it can produce, but if it gets dry, the numbers may be lower than one would hope. Like, it's not the ideal year. So what we're seeing here, I'm happy. There is disease pressure. I know everybody in the valley is suffering with issues. What is that yield drag going to be because of it? is having a Sclerotinia-resistant gene in your canola a payoff this year? Doubling that up with some fungicide application, are we seeing the benefits of that? That's TBD. But from the feedback I've had so far from growers, I've had nearly 100 run through here in the last 3 days, and it's all been the same feedback. 505 has that sclero gene in it. Great results, looking well, definitely better than any other canola that doesn't have it, noticeably better. Now, big question is it gonna translate to yield? We'll find out soon enough. And I'd like to introduce you to a guy who has 12 years with Pioneer and 18 years with the Canola Council. So he does know stuff about canola, we'll say. And that is my area agronomist and the one from Manitoba with Pioneer brand seed, Derwin Hammond. Come on in here, buddy.
Thanks a lot, TJ. Appreciate the opportunity to come out and be part of your field day out here today and have a look at some of the new products that we're experimenting with this year. So I'll just share a little bit about the background. These experimental products, basically they're registered, but this is our last look at them across a wider landscape in trials like this to make that decision about whether we're gonna advance them to commercial. And so this product right here is a little bit better yielding basis the data we have so far versus P505 MSL. It's, I would call it a strong 7 on that pod shatter reduction score, so slightly better than 505. But one thing you'll really notice is the earlier maturity with this product. So that's certainly been a focus of our breeding team, is trying to move to some earlier maturing products and give guys options depending on geographically where they're located and whether that maturity is a factor in the performance. So really excited to see this one. You can really see it is the ripest in this plot, and so it's definitely showing that early maturity that we expected. The next product down here, it's a little bit stronger for verticillium stripe, and both these products have unique sources of club root, so certainly lots of new features with these experimentals. You can see this one's also a touch earlier than 505, not as early as the experimental we just looked at, but we are seeing that plant health just that little bit better. There is some verticillium stripe showing up in this location. We're seeing lots of that showing up throughout the province this year. Wet conditions early in June seem to be a promoter for that disease. And so basically with the verticillium stripe, tiny sclerotia in the soil. When they germinate, they grow into that water conducting tissue in the root and move up into the stem, and then they migrate out. And so you'll see that characteristic starburst pattern when we clip the base of the stems. And so we're seeing some of that. We're also, this site was sprayed, but we're seeing some sclerotinia pressure in spite of that single pass of a fungicide. And that's where having those genetics that TJ talked about in combination with a fungicide can really be effective in terms of limiting the pressure from that disease. And so this product historically has yielded similar, I would say, to 505, but we'll see if some of those disease attributes pay off this year. So primarily here at this location, we're finding a couple of the 4 major diseases that attack canola, sclerotinia and verticillium stripe. And so with sclerotinia, those hard black sclerotia that are formed in the stem, they drop into the soil. When we have wet weather coming into flowering time, those germinate and produce the little mushrooms that release spores in the air. They land on the flowers, and those decaying flowers become the food source to start that process of the fungus growing into the stems of the plant. And so when those petals drop into the canopy, if we've got continuing wet conditions, that's when we get a lot of sclerotinia pressure. This site was sprayed with a fungicide, but the wet conditions early on really contributed to high pressure, so that single pass of a fungicide not quite getting us 100% control. We're seeing a few escapes. And so this is a classic example of a plant that's been affected by sclerotinia. And what you look for is when you break open that stem, you'll find inside these hard black sclerotia. And so you can see at the base of this stem, those larger black sclerotia bodies, those are really classic indicator that this plant has been affected by sclerotinia. What I'm seeing sometimes with a fungicide, it delays the onset, so you avoid some of that early infection in that main stem, but we get some later petals that land in the upper part of the canopy can cause symptoms that look somewhat like this, and you get that same white mold growth. In this case though, what I'm seeing this year is sometimes those symptoms are actually from verticillium stripe. And so when we clip the base of that stem, you can see that really characteristic starburst pattern, and that is from that verticillium stripe. It moves up through that xylem tissue, and then it moves out into the outside of the stem, and that's what produces that starburst pattern as a disease migrates out to just below the surface of the stem. And that's where it will produce those really tiny microsclerotia that you'll see later on when this plant dies and that stem starts to shred apart. And so this is an example. If you're looking for the verticillium stripe, you want to take a pair of shears and similar to what we do to look for a blackleg disease in canola, you want to clip it close to the base. And then again, you look for that starburst pattern. We can see it a bit here migrating out. The symptoms on this plant are relatively minor. It hasn't developed fully, the disease on this plant yet. And so as this continues to develop, that starburst pattern will get much more defined and easy to see. And so in terms of control, obviously we've got the genetic resistance from a sclerotinia standpoint. We can also utilize those foliar fungicides in that early bloom period to help suppress sclerotinia. When it comes to verticillium stripe, we don't have a lot of control options. So our breeders are really looking at screening our breeding material to try and find products that have better tolerance to the verticillium stripe. We've launched one new product, P617SL. It's got improved genetic resistance to sclerotinia, but it's also got a higher score for verticillium stripe than we've had in any of our material previously. And so it's also a 6 maturity. That also helps in terms of verticillium, just maintaining that plant health until later in the season and letting those pods develop and the seed in those pods develop as much as possible.
What did I tell you, fellas? Fillettes? This guy knows what he's talking about. I hope you learned something. I did. Just a deep well of knowledge, like a 200-footer for sure. So I'd like to take the opportunity, Derwin, thank you for coming out here, spend the day with me, boondocking at crop tour day number 3. It's August 22nd and just a treat of a day. So thank you.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Really enjoyed it.
Welcome everyone to the bean plot. Today is October 1st, 2024. Very excited to be out here today. We're showcasing 4 different flavors of Pioneer beans. I'm going to give you a little bit of history of this plot. Its plant date was May 15th. Started out with some issues. I know you don't want to go back to thinking about last spring so much in regards to temperature, maybe moisture. It was wet and it was cold. And the beans knew it. Everything did. These beans really started growing when the heat came, which was July. So they didn't have a whole lot of season to really get going, grow, and become what they are here right now. So my expectations on this plot was low. It's just not the ideal for conditions for beans. But here we are, take a look at them. They look good, really good. I'm excited to see these yields come off. Expectations, just say in that 40 to 50 range. These varieties that we have a brand new 0009, and we'll show it to you here in a bit. It's our A Series 28Es. The E is for Enlist. They're down to the north a bit, a little shorter plant, but a lot of pod set. But the ones that I'm really interested in, and I'm gonna put my money on, is possibly these 002s. I had them out last year. They were great. They performed above expectation. I did 3 side-by-side weighs against a competitor's variety, and it came out on top 2 out of 3 times, with the 3rd time being a tie. That variety is in this plot again. So we're gonna give her the full pepper and see how we can do against one of the leading competitive brands for soybeans here in the Swan River Valley. Protein. Let's talk about protein in beans for a moment. There's a lot of talk about early maturing beans and having low protein count. Protein beans may be something that might be graded here in the future or now. I'm not 100% sure on that part of it. I know it has been an issue with crushers, these early maturing beans being lower. I wanted us to throw a little shout out at these 002s. Not only are they a great high yielding bean, but their protein level is also very good. Pioneer's data here is at 34.96% protein. So that's pretty good. That's actually really good, guys. If you're looking for an early bean, this would be the one. Give it a try. If you haven't tried it yet, 2025, hoping to see it in your field. The next series of bean I really was telling you about, I'm excited about, is these new 003s. They're our new Z series bean, and Pioneer's claiming an average yield bump of 2.7 bushels. They look good all year long. I can stand up beside them. Nice height. Top pods filled. That's always a plus. I can't really stress the E end of it, the Enlist. For those of you who don't know about the Enlist chem, well, I'll have somebody at my meeting to discuss that in a little more detail. But long short, you can use Roundup, mix it with 2,4-D choline, and give you a one heck of a weed kill. It works great. I've had a few people use it this year. Their takeaway was very affordable, very easy to mix, just a great win, and the weed control was mint. So, something to look forward to. Should be trying it on your farm next year, especially if you got some of them dirty fields that just need a little cleanup. So the next variety I want to show you guys is these 0009s. I've had Pioneer beans that are early maturing in the past, and I've given up on them for a while, to be quite honest with you. They're shorter bean, and the maturity is definitely there. The problem is that maturity came with a sacrifice of yield. Is that gonna be true again today? Are these 0009s gonna be right on the 002s and 003s butt? Probably not, but we'll find out. I'll show you the difference here in height. I'm excited to see how they do. We can go down all the way to a 0007 with Pioneer. That would be a bean that you'd be taking off in the mid-September. So you can see they're not super tall. There's beans there, and they are dry. These could have been combined quite a while ago. Nice sized bean though. The big trial is these 003s, these new Z series beans versus the competitors. And I'm gonna tell you what the competitors are. They're the D8Xs, guys. If you've grown them, you know they're a good bean. Can't say anything bad about them. What I can say though, for the positive for us, is that Enlist chemistry. That cleans up land, it's cheap to use, it's mix is so easy. Volunteer canola, thing of the past. Glyphosate resistant weeds, thing of the past. It's just another tool in the toolbox. So you should really, I can't stress enough, try it on your farm, guys. We're gonna find out today, is the juice worth the squeeze? Are these new Z series beans gonna edge out these D8Xs? I'm gonna show you guys something interesting that everybody always wants to see, is plant height and pod height. You can come check it out. I'm gonna stand right in the middle line. Definitely a color difference between the two. D8s. The 003s. They look really great, guys. I'm really excited about these beans. I really hope they perform, because that means more bushels, more money in your pocket, plus the clean fields. So that's enough talking. Let's get the combine going and get this plot off. All right. Well, we're just about halfway through this and things are looking pretty excited. I didn't tell you guys about these 004 beans that were in the plot. Mainly they were just in here for funsies. Like 004, that's getting more like a Brandon, Winnipeg maturity bean. But guys, these Z series beans, not bad. So we got D8Xs on the south and the north end, so we'll get side by sides of kind of both. But here where we're at right now, just almost like I said, just almost halfway through, the Syngenta D8Xs so far at an area of 1.52 acres. So it's 1,900 feet at 35 feet wide. The bushels per acre on the D8Xs was 43.2. And these 004s, which I'm not gonna kid you, I expected them to do bad. They just do not, there's nothing sexy about them at all. But 46.8, not bad. 3.5 bushel gain. Pioneer was saying what? The Z series beans, 2.7 bushels better on average. Seems like an understatement to me. But we'll see how these new 003s do, because they're a Z bean too. Z bean. Well, we got it in the bin, well, tender. Data's here, and it's kind of what I expected. The earlier the maturing, the lower the yield. As we extended the maturity, the yield went up. Before I get into all the data on it, I'd just like to thank Jeremy Yelnick, his father Murray, for taking the time to not just seed the plot, but take good care of it, spray it, and again, here we're harvesting it. So thanks guys, I really appreciate it. I know they're a pain, but they're worth doing. Because remember, when you do a plot with GSPS, every variety counts to a Yieldhero canola draw ticket. Every variety. So we did 4 Pioneer varieties, 4 extra tickets. And all these numbers are, just for the record, are corrected to 13% moisture. It's like 8 outside here right now. So just making it as completely transparent as possible. That's what I do here with GSPS. We're not gonna fudge numbers or do anything like that. It's this is the data. And the board, you can read it, you'll see. I'd like the D8Xs to come in a little bit lower than what they did. They performed, but I'm gonna show you that's where they are. That's the numbers. Now the data. I know you're eager, so we're gonna share it to you. Like I had said, 002s, had them for the last couple years. They came in strong this spring. All these varieties suffered with the cold, but they all powered through. Last year we were seeing 50 to 60 bushels. Well, 57 was the highest. And so here we are, 44.6. Moving on to those new Z beans. They came in at 46.2. I love that. Those are nice numbers, especially for kind of a miserable year. Now then those 004s, I was talking to you guys about the 004s. That's a long season bean, and they were not showy at all. They're probably half the height as the D8Xs that were right beside them. Half. But the node spacing was tight. And that's a long season maturity bean for here. I'm not gonna suggest growing that. Like it's October 1st, seeded the 15th of May. A little risky, but they were dry and they went through the combine fine. So there is that, and they did come with a yield bump with that extra maturity. At 49.1, so close to that 50 mark, so close. Rats. That would have been really nice to have a number with a 5 this year. I don't think Canola's gonna be doing it. It's not over yet, but I'm sure there's a 5 in the canola yet. We'll see. We haven't gotten to our canola plot. And then lastly, the D8Xs. 47.3, nothing wrong with that. They're a nice bean, guys. The only thing I can really say, both beans are great to grow on your farm. Both companies have good beans. The big takeaway here is that enlist technology. If you're gonna be within a bushel or apples to apples, last year I did my plot against D8s and I was anywhere from a couple bushels to 6 bushels better. This year it's a little different. Different years, different game, right? That's what makes farming so fun. But you get the enlist chemistry. You get that 2,4-D choline, that cleans your land up. It's just easy. It's affordable, tank mixes, perfect. So something to consider moving into next year. So leaving it on that note, I'd like to thank all of you guys taking the time and doing business with us. We got the canola plot yet to do. Excited to see that. Expectations are in the 40, we'll say 40, maybe 50 bushels, and hoping to get that off in this week to come. And thanks to Fuzzo. She pretty much gets all the credit for everything that goes on. Well, good day, everyone. I want to thank you for listening in on here. We have a really big day today. This is the first time that ever in the 10 years of GSPS, we're doing a corn silage weigh. Yeah, you heard right. We actually, Derwin Hammond here brought the scales all the way up. So we got some data there that we are going to share later on. We took some feed samples and those are going to get sent away. This variety in particular we're looking at, it's a beautiful plant. This is our Pioneer Hybrid 7574 AM, it's the Acre Max. Not gonna get into a huge amount of differences on the variety here. just really wanted to show you guys what the plant can look like, its height and cob size and potential performance out of it, for your cows. And what better person to discuss corn maturity and potential of what that plant can do here in the Swan River Valley is Mr. Hammond, AKA Hammer, and he's gonna tell you all about it right now.
You bet. Thanks, TJ. One of the reasons we're trying out this new 75 CRM hybrid in the Swan River Valley is when you're selecting a silage hybrid, you're really looking for good grain production, but you want to take full advantage of the growing season that's available in your geography. And so in the past, our P7211 AM has been a popular grain hybrid up here because it can make full maturity. But with silage, you don't want to get to full maturity. When you break open your cob, ideally your hard starch sets from the outside of the kernel, and as you convert those sugars to starch, that hard starch progresses in. So when it gets about halfway down the kernel, you start to think about taking off your silage. Somewhere in that 1/2 to 2/3 milk line, that's what that's called, gives you the best combination of palatability of your stalks and the plant material and the starch level in that final silage product. Ultimately, we're growing corn silage for that energy that comes from the kernels on the ear. And so being able to take more advantage of the growing season tends to lead to better grain production and more starch in that silage pile. So what we're looking at when we talk about milk line progression, you have the hard starch at the outside, it progresses in, and you can see where that lighter colored milky line is. That is the milk. It's high in sugar. That sugar is being converted into that starch. When we get about halfway down the kernel, we start to think about chopping our silage. Most of the data is showing somewhere in that 1/2 to 2/3 milk line is the ideal timing to maximize your energy value without giving up too much palatability in the plant material.
So there you have it. Thanks, Derwin, for that. That is great information. You got to remember that. He knows. So we learned a lot of stuff about corn here today. Just a quick little bleep bloops on it. But if you want to know more about corn, feel free to ask me. And if I don't know, I'll ask him. And lastly, I'd like to thank Walsh Farms, especially Kathleen Walsh, for allowing us to be out here, and Tintern Farms for growing mostly all Pioneer brand corn. So that's great. So if they're growing it on their farm, I think you know what to do on yours. Welcome everyone to the big unveiling here. We are at the plot. Today is October 9th. Been waiting for this moment for quite a while. It's been a year for canola. We're not, we all know. I'm not gonna say much about it, let's just move on from, But what we're gonna do out here today, guys, is still gonna be exciting. Not expecting great yields. We got hit by the big 3 diseases, the Facilium, the Sclerotinia and the blackleg. And going through looks and through this plot, yeah, it's all here, and you're gonna see it, and the yield's definitely gonna reflect that. So going back to our yield performance, we all know that the valley's had such a struggle with canola this year. Our wheat crop was great. Our soybean crop is looking to come off quite good. Very surprising and very nice to see. So we got some options out there, you know, maybe for changing our canola rotation slightly, but let's not forget the good times. It's easy to get down on a guy's self. You know, yeah, it was a poor canola year, but what about all the good years? Like looking back at last year, we were doing Yieldhero, and it was the best Yieldhero that I've ever had. This is the year number 10, and it would have been nice if we had an even better one for this year, being a 10-year anniversary, but that's sometimes how it goes. I guess the big thing here to take away is to remember, we've had a lot of good canola years, guys. You know, we had 60s, 70s, and we even got our first 84 bushel to the acre. That was amazing. Like, that was a treat. So that being said, I'm gonna show you guys some of the varieties, some of the pod drops, some of the loss, and some of the stance. Every variety's got its pros and cons here, I guess we'll say. There's an experimental variety we can take a quick peek at. It's just, we'll call it 71. Is not really looking super great, at least for this year. So we'll show you all that. We'll move on, and we're gonna show you all the good stuff too. What 520 has to offer, what 505 has done in the past, and we'll see how it performs this year in conjunction with the rest of them, and this new 617. So there's a lot of exciting stuff here. Hoping to see some nice yield differences and harvestability issues along with the pod drop. So let's stop talking about it and go and do it. So we're out here with Fuzzle the dog, and we're just gonna showcase here plant droppage again. It's August 9th. This has been through a couple big winds. You can see that it's got a lot of disease in it, but on the positive note, look, it's not laying on the ground. I think there's gotta be some points for that. I know the combine would say yes. But what I want you to see is we're gonna look on the ground here on 505 and look for those cotyledon plants. And you see there is a few here and there, but there is some. Why can't it look like that in the spring? It's usually all full little pepper holes. That's a great question, TJ. Thanks, TJ. Okay, let's go take a look at 520. This is rated a 7.7 on our shatter scale. This is a 7. This variety's our new highest shatter score at the 7.7, P520. What I'm seeing here is less plants. This variety's doing good. Now I'm going to show you guys 519, and remember it's not rated to pod shatter, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Pod shatter score is 6, so that means it's a swath variety, and as you can see, that wind mixed with a little rain and a little disease, she lost bushels, boys. So this variety here is a new experimental. We'll find out if it's going to be pushed forward in the production lineup for next year. It doesn't have any type of straight cut rating or anything like that. So there is some drop here. It's not as bad as what we've seen in the 519. Our second experimental in the plot, it ends with the number 72. Definitely less loss here. Still not as good as 505, but it's definitely better than the last experimental we looked at. So this variety is P612L. Didn't really talk about it much. Been around for this to be year number 4. And it's rated as 6. But it's a full season canola, being the 6 on the front, being 612, the 6 represents the maturity. The varieties that start with a 5 are the ones that are a mid-season. 5 equals the mid-season. Very impressed here. This was a surprise, and I wasn't going to really show much about this variety. I don't think it's going to stick around much longer. Being that it's a 6 on the pod shatter, it looks pretty good. Like, for what I'm seeing here, very comparable to 505. And I've had 612 in the past up against 505. And in the last 3 years of data, 505 has just edged out 612. You know, maturity being better and yield potential ended up being better, especially last year. Seen more disease in the 612 versus the 505 almost had none. I'm not going to tell you the yield on it yet. You have to stay and wait for that one, but it was a surprise even for me. So this is that new variety, the 617. The 6, like I said, it's been a long season, and it is rated a 6 on the pod shatter, just like the 612. So riddle me this: why does that pod shatter get a 6 on the 612? Come take a look at the 617. Same rating, and you're gonna see, this is what I would expect to see. Fuzzle, you're losing all the yield. Like I was saying, you can take a look at the ground, you can see there's loss here. And that's what like I said, that's what I expect to see out of a 6. All right, so this variety is the competitor variety we have in here, and that's 343. I really don't have a lot of experience with that product. I know the Vigors have been around forever. What I'm seeing out of this variety, it's a mid-season, I do know that. It looked pretty good all year. Like the other varieties, there's disease in it. You can look at the shatter on it. I don't know where they rate it for their shatter score. I would say it compares into that 505. I don't think it's as good as the 520, but we're talking pretty small strips, but let's just call it comparison. There are plants. The shatter score, low and acceptable. The plot is off. It's getting late. Matt's turned his lights on. Fuzzo's getting a little tired. And I think we're getting ready to call her a day out here. Before I show you the yields, there's very interesting information and also kind of confusing. Going back on previous historical data for the area, it really seems like this year you can pretty much, I don't know, it's all like upside down world. That's the best way to explain it. Varieties that I expected to be better weren't, and some that I expected to be poor did great for this year. Let's keep that in mind. One thing I will note is going from the south side of the field and making our way to the north, the yields did get progressively better as we work our way south, and that's what the combine operators also mentioned, talking to them. The stuff about a half a mile down, it sounds like that's where we should have put the plot, and the difference is that's the poor ground. So riddle me that. That's sandy, and this is like the decent ground. If anybody's in the room that can explain why the sand is producing better than over here, I'd like to know the answer to that. You could share that to me afterward. I'd appreciate it. On that, I'm going to flip the sign around and just tell you what we learned. So here we have it, 505, 35.7, 343P, 37.9. And I will put a little disclaimer on that one, if you will. The guy operating the combine said it was pretty growly going through. So something to consider. Nice yield though, I'll give him that. I do like that. Kind of wish the 505 was that one, and we could reverse that number, but that's the way she goes. You know, I'm completely transparent on this stuff, so I'm going to share that data. 617, 35.0, a little lost there, unfortunately, but again, it's rated as 6. And then P612, kind of, that's the big wild card. You guys, there's lots of you in the room have grown 612 in the past, and we've switched it out to 505 because it's just been a more consistent, better variety, stance-wise and disease-wise. But here we are, if somebody can explain that to me, that's significantly better. So I don't know, I guess we'll be putting 612 back on the table for another year, give it another go. Next variety is an experimental. This ends with number 72. It went 30. And from this point, this numbers just start kind of going down. Experimental 71, 26.9. And that variety looked unimpressive all year long. If you were out here earlier, Matt's having fun. If you're out here, the experimental 71, it didn't look that great right from get-go. There was definitely shatter to it. It did get more disease in it, and the numbers here definitely reflect that. 519, although it shattered out something quite bad, still yielded. So that's interesting. Something good canola to swath, I'm going to say. If you still got a swather, it might be something to look at. And lastly, 520, low pod shatter on that one. It was noticeably better than 505. Like, it was better. Unfortunately, it was at the wrong end of the plot, because I feel and believe that if this variety was at the south end, we'd be seeing a good 10 bushel bump on there. But there you have it. That's the plot. 10 years doing Yieldhero. Would be nice if these were double that, but you know what? Can't win them all. On that note, I'd like to give some special thanks to all of you. People, if you're watching this for the first time, you're gonna be in my award ceremony, 10-year award ceremony. I wanna thank you guys so much for being here, being part of GSPS. You know, like any entrepreneur, it's got its wild rides, some good and some years you just kind of wanna hit the old delete button in the old beep, boop, boop, brain and carry on. This would definitely be on the Control-Alt-Delete. But that's farming, right guys? Come on, it's farming. Next year, it's gonna be better. You gotta be optimistic. That's all I can say on that. And so again, big thanks to all of you. I appreciate you all so much. You know, you're just really minty people. And a big thanks to Matt Adams. Thank you for taking the time not only to seed this plot with me. June 1st, I guess, is when we did it, just so everybody's aware or asked, but to take it off. Really got a nice day for it. It was a treat. 21 Celsius, beautiful and sunny. What a beautiful October harvest day. So maybe that's a great way to wind up 10 years of doing this. Thank you to Matt. Thank you to all you in the room, and big thanks to Shulman Farms too, because well, it's definitely their equipment out there. So I guess that's about all I can really say is thanks, and I look forward to doing business with each and all of you throughout the years to come. On that note, I'm going to conclude this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I had a great time making it, and by making it, just kind of more standing here and just babbling. If this video turns out to be a real nice piece, you can thank my videographer the guy who puts all this magic together and takes a guy like me who just kind of rambles and makes him look like he's kind of knows maybe somewhat what he's talking about. So Toby, thank you very much. And let's have a great 2025 growing year.